Okay, so this is sort of the second part of the Rialto attack strategy. The reason I would choose Diva at this particular point as opposed to, like, I guess the standard Zarya, Zarya, Ryan, Hanzo, all that boring shit, is because there is so much in the way of vertical space that allows you to capitalize on virtually free payload time. Like up until here, it's easy, just be that person pushing the payload, getting in poke damage, and using defense matrix to block like a helix rocket, or all that sort of stuff. The sort of key damage like Reinhardt shifts and that sort of thing. Once the payload progresses up until here though, or let's say here, once the payload progresses up to here, I'm sort of leaning towards thinking either having Diva go here, and no, that won't work. Purely because the enemy team isn't going to be set up here. You're not going to be able to set up a crossfire, they're going to be underneath you. If they have an Orisa and the Orisa goes right click and then halt over here, you, as Diva, can't see it and can't defense matrix it until it's too late. So, as Diva, you'll want to either go underneath, which is useful because you've got a Mega that you can fall back to, and that way you can take some pressure off your healers. And you'll still be able to use the payload for a shield, an immortal shield. And I think you'll probably be able to use this corner a bit successfully. You'll be able to use that corner successfully in that it's a body block shield from whoever's doing main damage. So it'll probably be like a Hanzo, Reinhardt, Zarya, blah blah blah, all that boring shit. While you'll still get some damage because your body is fat. That'll still work. And then, as the sort of second position, let's say, you can fly to up here. You can help clear out any of this, and you've still got fairly good line of sight for your healers. So Zen can put an orb on you really easily. Mercy can heal you and still be able to. Okay, say if Mercy's here, you fly up, and she can probably, and then sort of fall to behind here. That'll work. And so you can use this particular spot as your, I guess, your like heal point. If you need heals, get to here. Or alternatively, jump down, small health pack, which won't help you a whole lot, but a little bit, and you'll be able to regain the group and get heals. So that's sort of, I guess, the pacifist's way, whereas standing on this corner will probably be a bit more aggressive, but depending on what shield you have, then it'll probably still work. I think using this space for Diva is really helpful purely because she is super mobile, so she can get between here and help out anyone that's in the floor beneath. Never been down here. Oh wait, no, that is. And then also she'll be able to get to this high ground. That means that if you can get to a high ground, say if the payload's here, your team is slowly progressing, and say they're in shield deficit, they have to push back a little bit. They have to pull back, and you can start being aggressive. Say if you're up here and you're not getting much value in, you're doing some shield damage, great, but their team just isn't doing anything. This is a particularly helpful space purely because as soon as you're standing on top of here, the, I guess, correct method for the enemy team is to all huddle underneath, right? And the reason they'd have to all huddle underneath is because if they moved anywhere back, they'd essentially be sitting ducks. They don't have anything in the way of cover. They have that nice tree. They have these little boxes here. But, you know, if you're a tank, you can still get shot on from this if you're standing there. And so, like, the enemy team will probably move underneath to this little nook here. And that's particularly helpful. That means that you, as an off-tank, have just opened up space for free, essentially, just by being in a place and forcing them to move somewhere else. It makes you get less value if you're standing here and they're underneath you, but it's a good opportunity for you to capitalize on any mistakes that they've made. One mistake that comes to, or not mistake, one sort of strategy that might come to mind is, say if their whole team, apart from a Widowmaker, say if everyone crawls under here, you know, they start sort of doing that retreat to the Mega or retreat through to here. Let's call that the mini room. Yeah, left mini, right mini. Or our mini, their mini, same thing. One strategy that comes to mind from the enemy team is that they have 5 of their players here or 4 of their players underneath where I'm shooting, and that they have, say, a Widow and a Zen through here, which is pretty valid. You know, they'll be able to get yeah, they'll be able to get space here. One particularly, you know, if you're over there where I'm shooting and playing D.Va against a Widow, you're sort of screwed, right? Whereas if you, as D.Va, have possession of this high ground, and you have, say, a Junkrat or a Widow or someone with long range, probably a Hanzo, given the sort of team comp that I have in mind. If you've got a Hanzo that's here, like, cool. Hanzo has so much value here because he can sonic this spot here, he gets every single person underneath, and at the same time, as D.Va, you'll be able to sort of use that information, maybe zip across to this high ground, put some, like, seriously nutty damage into them, and at the same time, bam. As soon as they start aggressing on you, step backwards. It'll put you into a little bit of a pinch, purely because you won't be able to use this Mega, or you will, but it'll be at the risk of, you know, of them shooting at you once you get to it. And it also depends on what your cooldowns are. If you're not mobile because you've got a booster's cooldown, then you're sort of fucked. I guess a good strategy for off-tank would just be to keep utilizing these high grounds to get angles on them and to keep making them, you know, okay, so say if you've got, the aim is to keep making them rotate until you can notice a flaw in their positioning. So say if you've got your main tank here, you know, probably Orisa or Rhine, over here, and you're slowly moving the payload. You, as D.Va, will be able to sort of flush out or just tickle their backline. Yes, you'll be open, but you can just fall right. Ooh, that's a bug. Oh wait, no. But you can jump there, yeah. Okay, so utilizing the space is particularly helpful. As soon as your team has this zone and this zone, including this high ground and this one, then you're oppressing their team more than they're doing sort of the adverse effect on them. Okay, so moving on to that, you're just trying to search for ways to get their go. Once the team fight gets to about here, you'll be able to, okay, so say you're as D.Va. Payload starts here, you work your way up here, blah 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 blah. trying to find angles on them and trying to avoid damage as well. At this point, this is a particularly good space because say you're at 600 health and bang, you get headshot by a Widowmaker. You can just go, ooh, get that, and then you've already averted that damage. And you can start shooting from here. You've just progressed your position. Even though you've taken a full headshot from Widow, you'll be able to progress your position and give help to the rest of your team. Say payload gets here, you'll be able to have this entire stretch of view. You're also providing line of sight for your Zen, line of sight for your Mercy to heal you, and you're providing verticality, which is ridiculously helpful on this map. And then say you progress it to here. Will the enemy snipe you if you're standing here? Yes, yes they will. Okay, so don't shoot these balustrades. Purely because it provides another, point of shield for you, even though it only takes 1 tick of damage, but still it's worth it. Okay, and say you're fighting here, if they've got a D.Va and Rein, then bang, well, you don't step off, but say if they've, not D.Va and Rein, Zarya and Rein, you've just put in like 300 worth of damage into them right here. And that's like splash damage as well, that's really high value. What if there's like a Genji or something that targets you here? And that was easy. And then, if you've only got a Zen heal because your Orissa's getting pummeled, then you can get that Mega, and then you're back to good health. And the Zen heals will sort of top up the rest of that chip damage. Okay, so fill in the rest of the blanks in terms of any of the nitty-gritty stuff that's like the unforeseens. I guess as D.Va on this bit, you don't really want to be standing here. If you're expecting, at this point, you'd probably be expecting your second enemy Zarya ult, if they're good, or their first if they're bad. Less effective, let's not say bad because, all bad. Yeah, this is like your sitting duck zone. Like, yes, you're providing a shield, blah 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 blah, like a body shield for any squishies and all that sort of stuff, but like, is that the best way that you can utilize yourself? No, not really. A lot of the time, when you've just capped, the enemy team has shit spawns, so they'll be in this room here, in which case, zoop. This will be really good, right? If you're able to utilize this C-shaped high ground, you can sort of shoot here. You can like keep tabs on what's going on essentially, which is sort of what you want to do as D.Va. Like you don't really want to tunnel vision yourself too much because she is the most like diverse hero in terms of offensively, defensively, protectively, blah 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 blah. You want to sort of have your ear to the ground. You can shoot here. You can keep an eye out for these two flanks, which is really really crucial. And then at the same time, if they're not playing anything particularly flanky, or if they're playing a lot more conservative, etc., then you'll be able to like pressure their, like put more pressure onto the payload, put yourself onto the payload and all that sort of stuff, and you'll still be able to sort of keep up back here, get into the 1v1s, and get heals from Zen, Mercy, etc. if you want. I guess another good spot would probably be here. I don't think you really want the other team at all to be able to use this high ground. For obvious reasons, because high ground is the devil. No, there have just been quite a lot of times where McCree has like walked up here and he's ulted and he's killed 3 people, or Reaper has just sort of casually walked up here and then he's gone like, oh, pressed Q, and then you're all fucked. So for the initial sort of push part at this crook, or this length, you'd probably want to be standing here. You can keep tabs on, for the most part, if people are walking in through here. You've got this door covered, you've got this main space covered, which is really helpful. So moving on, sort of the next logical position would be here. You've got a fair amount of immortal shield, and it's pretty bad in terms of sightlines for here, which is the only issue. Just providing that high ground though gives them another worry. Okay, so say if you're on high ground, you know, you're shooting down on them and all that sort of stuff. If you're putting shield pressure like onto their Rhine, this is ridiculously helpful, purely because if they're playing Reinhardt, they're going to be shooting at, you know, whoever your main shield tank is or something, or not shooting, you know, they're going to be focusing on your main group, which is going to be roughly around the payload. And you're going to be up here, like, they again, they can't see you. Like, this space is cut out of your field of vision, so you want to be able to utilize that. You just want to distract the main tanks, or split the enemy main tanks' attention as much as possible, and at the same time be able to shut down any possibility of people coming in from the flanks. Like, past this wall, like this zone here, it's really open, right? So, you know, if your team's coming through here, even though, yes, there are walls, but they're intermittently cut through by these really nice Venetian archers. So, your team can sort of keep tabs just naturally on who's going to be walking through here. So, you want to have this high ground covered. It's a bit more exposed, but you're an off tank, so that works out well. Here we are. Say you have progressed to here and there is a fight on... Yeah, okay, so say there's a fight like 0.1 meter before it's capped, right? And you're on attack. Where do you want to go? Sort of leaning towards thinking here-ish. Like, you might... Do you want to set up a crossfire? Do you want to be that tank that sets up the crossfire? Maybe. You've got a mini here, so it's not invalid. This might be a very strong position, actually, because on one hand, you're shutting down this spot, which isn't the highest priority flank to be shutting down, but it still, you know, needs observation. You've got this body block here, which is really good. It means that you're probably going to be able to get by on Zen heals, and you go up through here if there's McCree or something like that that needs urgent attention. You know, if McCree sort of does that standard thing where he walks around the corner without scouting and presses Q, then you're like, oh, well, that's fucking stupid. You know, because if you're playing deeper and you're hiding around here, fighting poke damage, he does that, and you can and then kill him. So that's good. And moving through here, if your tank line, if your main tank, sorry, and the payload line, let's call it the payload group of your teammates, is going through here, you don't want to be standing with them. It could potentially be valid that you go up here, provide a bit of not so much damage, because, you know, you're playing D.Va, but providing distraction. This would be particularly helpful. You know, you'd be able to, like, give them those little tiny, you know, 1 damage tick that tells them, like, hey, I know that you're flanking. That's fucking stupid. Or you could stay on this high ground after you just sort of walked through here, provide damage here. You know, you'd be able to defense matrix anyone. You'd be able to get really, really good view of the enemy Zarya if they do have one. If they, you know, be trying to figure out, like, you know, when they sort of get that look about them when they look like they're about to grab, and they just sort of, you know, they look like they're thinking a bit more, you can sort of anticipate it a little. This gives you, like, the perfect sort of position to defense matrix that and nullify their combo. Once the payload progresses a little bit more, you'll be able to push it down, because the high load becomes a little bit less necessary. The high ground, becomes a little bit less necessary. You know, you could have like a Widow here, but she probably doesn't need as much heals or anything like that, and your Zen can probably, you know, zip heal her, or Mercy if it's desperate, more desperate. This spot for Diva would be particularly helpful to sort of stay in, because you'll be able to not take that much damage, shut down this flank, and also keep an eye out for your back line at the same time as putting in damage on their front line. Another sort of benefit of this is that you're able to scout what their team comp is, well, not so much their team comp, their team positioning, and be able to see if there are any sort of opportunities that you can perhaps dive in, probably not dive in if you've got Narissa, and sort of just try and shut them down a little bit more in terms of give them less options. This is not too necessary unless, you know, say if you've got like one mobile DPS or something like that. Let's call them like an independent DPS where they don't need to rely as much on being with the team. Like, you know, McCree would definitely not be an independent DPS. Something like a Genji or a Tracer. So say if their Widow is out of position here. You know, she's been sniping at your team, but she's stayed her welcome. The perk of being here is that if your independent DPS has been like, oh, I can kill this Widow, then, you know, it only takes you 2 seconds. Literally only takes you 2 seconds to get onto that. And to provide that help. And also having the Mega would be particularly helpful for you. Okay, so this is probably the part where I would consider maybe switching. If it starts to go pear-shaped, like maybe swapping off Diva would be kind of helpful, purely just because it's like, you know, what high ground can you use? There's really not much. And, you know, if you're not able to use any particular high ground, then are there any bits where a Diva will be able to come in handy to both be offensive and also to be within earshot or within line of sight to be protective of any of your team squishies? The answer is not really. You know, you've got this sort of, you've got blue and you've got right, or let's say, you know, right and left. Just want to call that blue because as soon as you have a color attached to something, it becomes omnidirectional, whereas if you say right or left, then, you know, from this view, right is here. From this view, right is here. It becomes, you know, a bit more open to interpretation, and you don't want to do that. So if you say, you know, blue, then that's always going to be blue, regardless of where you're facing and whatnot. Just a general tip for callouts. Yeah, as Diva, the perk of being mobile is that you can help people here, you can get on the payload, all that sort of stuff. And then the sort of standard brawling ensues, and I guess the perk of being Diva is that if you are 0.1 meters away, then you can just zip. Bam, and then, you know, you're able to get the rest of the way.